In a surprise to the F1 world, Red Bull is experiencing a downward spiral. For the first time in more than 2 years, Red Bull is trying to find a solution. But unfortunately for them and their fans, they haven't succeeded at this yet. But as more details of what's happening behind closed doors are coming out, it's easy to see why. Are they going to lose the championship this year, or will return to their domination? Christian Horner has revealed what's really going on, and it's not looking good for Red Bull. In the early rounds of 2024, Red Bull was in a reasonably comfortable position. Max Verstappen was a successful winner, while Sergio Perez was a frequent podium finisher. Unfortunately for the Milton Keynes team, this advantage has quickly vanished. Updates are no longer producing the needed useful downforce, and the Austrian outfit has failed to provide major advancements to the RB20. Ferrari issued the first warning in Australia after Carlos Sainz won the race thanks to Verstappen's DNF. McLaren quickly underlined their ambitions in Miami, being the quickest team after introducing their first substantial 2024 modifications. Andrea Stella's squad has maintained their lead over Red Bull, despite receiving relatively little information from Woking in the races since. Mercedes has also joined the battle at the front, after finally catching up with this generation of cars and their characteristics. Upgrades to the W15 have been exceedingly effective, even if changes in track conditions can still disrupt balance. James Allison's technical staff no longer operates with one hand tied behind their back. This provides the German constructor with a dependable platform for the rest of 2024 and, more importantly, 2025. The cost cap drives teams to use their resources more efficiently. Outfits with strong financial support no longer have the same margin for error that existed in prior years. Because of the high stakes, Red Bull's recent upgrade package in Hungary was especially disappointing. While these changes had an impact, they did not result in the expected factory performance. Given the number of pieces included and the money spent on their manufacturing, Red Bull is concerned about the ultimate outcome. Unlike McLaren, who are within striking distance in the championship, Red Bull has already spent a significant portion of their development money. Andrea Stella of McLaren has expressed optimism about the changes he expects to see in the coming weeks. In contrast, Red Bull is suffering with diminishing returns in its pursuit of lap time. These development difficulties are only one of several issues for Red Bull to deal with. The defending champions are on the defense after Sergio Perez's poor performance and the departure of key players, most recently Jonathan Wheatley. This all has caused Horner to speak out, and he feels the next 18 months will be a tough struggle with its competitors. Other teams have caught the Austrian team up in the current restrictions, prompting Horner to feel that 2026 is the next best chance to be dominant again. Max Verstappen has won half of the races this season, totaling 7. However, 7 drivers from 4 teams have taken the checkered flag first this season. The previous season, Red Bull won every single race but one. Carlos Sainz of Ferrari was the first non-Red Bull driver to win a race, and it occurred in Singapore. Red Bull is no longer dominating as they expose team flaws and apply pressure. It has highlighted the significance of a second driver since Sergio Perez is struggling. Despite his form, Red Bull has opted to keep the Mexican with the team following the summer break. This puts a lot of pressure on Verstappen to deliver and lead the squad to championship victory once more. This all adds up to Red Bull's misery, and if they had a clear frontrunner for their second seat, they would have swapped out Perez, so their backlog of drivers is also disappointing right now. Despite losing its supremacy, Horner feels that having many teams competing for a race win is a great plus for the sport. However, as with other regulatory adjustments, the Briton remains certain that a dominating squad will emerge in 2026. "It's great for the sport," Horner said. "It's almost inevitable that when you get consistency of regulations, you always get convergence, if you look through the history of Formula One. I remember when I first came into Formula One, Ron Dennis banging that drum back in 2005. He had the best car at that time, but convergence has always brought the teams together. Of course, we've got a big regulation change in 2026, which will cause divergence, but between now and then I think it's going to be, for the next 18 months, flat out between the 4 teams. The 2026 regulations bring new power unit regulations into effect. This is likely to shake up the hierarchy. Despite the fact that the new regulations are only 18 months away, Red Bull is still working relentlessly on improving the performance of its current car. "The whole team is still working flat out on this car," stressed Horner, "because with stable regulations, whatever we learn now is relevant to next year anyway. If you reflect on the first part of the year now, we are over half distance. We've won 7 Grand Prix. We've won 2 or 3 sprint races. We're leading both championships, but over recent weeks that constructors' lead has diminished somewhat, and that's where our focus is. Verstappen leads Lando Norris with 78 points in the Drivers' Championship. In the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull leads McLaren by just 52 points. The sudden downfall of Red Bull has shocked many, but if you look closely, it's rather an uphill battle from the other team instead of a downfall. Like Horner said, it's a convergence. But how did the other teams manage this? Well, in McLaren's case, it turns out it was due to the fact they bought out talent from Red Bull's development team, according to a former F1 team boss. Could this battle be so fierce because McLaren bought all Red Bull's tricks? Former F1 team boss Otmar Safnauer mentioned, and feels it is definitely possible, that Rob Marshall brought Red Bull's secret sauce to McLaren in 2024. McLaren achieved a huge coup last year when they announced the hiring of Marshall, who formally joined the squad in January before being promoted to head designer after David Sanchez's departure earlier this season. Marshall joined McLaren following an 18-year career at Red Bull, where he worked closely with Adrian Newey for 17 years, playing an important part in the team's title victories with Verstappen and Sebastian Vettel. When asked about Marshall's effect on McLaren's chances, former Aston Martin and Alpine head Safnauer stated that it is possible for a single person to guide a team in the correct way technically. It's definitely possible for one person to come in and say, "The secret sauce at Red Bull was this. You should be looking in this direction," he said. That's definitely possible. When you hear things like the aero performance is unlocked through some mechanical design elements of the car, and you know what those are, and how those mechanical design elements actually unlock the performance, you can point that team in that direction to start looking here. It's that direction that you then start looking in and find performance. Absolutely, one person can make that difference, especially when you have a massive rule change like we've had. We're now into ground effect cars where we weren't before, and if there was some mechanical elements of the car that others didn't have, then it can happen. I'm not saying that's what it was, but I do think that there's performance to be had in that area that isn't pure aerodynamics, but is an aero enabler. Marshall's exit has been followed by that of Newey, who revealed in May that he will leave Red Bull in early 2025, and sports director Jonathan Wheatley, who was named team principal of Audi F1 earlier this week. A couple of weeks ago in Belgium, Red Bull technical director Pierre Wache encouraged the team's recovery from the loss of Newey. He said, "It's a challenge in the company, and it's a shame that he's leaving. But at one point, we move forward alongside. As an engineering team, what you see from outside is one aspect, but on our side, we already know when people leave the team, we have already organized ourselves with our team. We would prefer him with us, but that is not how it is. We don't think in this way. We try to see what you can do for yourself and how you can improve. If we see some weaknesses, we try to improve, and this is how we work. We concentrate on what we can do better." Asked if a new chapter is beginning at Red Bull, he replied, "For sure, but it's not new. Before, we had Peter Prodromou, who left after 2014. Mark Ellis left after 2013. It's the nature of the team and the leaders who left. They were a leader in their area. But it's a natural aspect of each organization. For sure, Adrian was a big figure of the system, but at one point, we give a chance to the younger, bright people to embrace this challenge like I have now. Some people like Enrico Balbo, head of aero, Ben Waterhouse, head of performance engineering, Craig Skinner, chief designer, Paul Monaghan, chief engineer. It is good for the people and for the team." What do you think? Will Red Bull spiral further downwards in these upcoming 18 months? Or will they be able to recover their deficit to McLaren and Mercedes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.